Those who are interested may have noticed that on several occasions I've talked about a secret project or secret projects. I'm about to talk about the lion of my secret projects. I have written a book on the runes, and I've also illustrated it. And nearly all of these pictures are in 2 A4 books. Nearly all done in biro. I can explain that a little bit because I'd just done a quite highly worked acrylic set of illustrations for a project I did on nursery rhymes, and whilst I love a lot of them, getting them into print and getting the light levels right remotely turned out to be absolutely horrible. And at one point I wasn't entirely sure how this book was going to be published, and it felt so much safer working in two-tone. I'd also been working on a project with Anita Govan on poetry, and we'd done that in two-tone, and the difference between the level of stress about printing it was huge. Anyway, I'm going to start moving into the book. This is all of the ballpoint pens not working at various points. That was the page where I vented my fury. Here are the runes themselves, drawn as if they were on rune stones. Rune stones are fun because, in fact, rune stones is kind of a made-up thing. Real rune stones are gravestones with names on them and stuff like that. Any evidence we have for fortune telling on runes, it's on staves, which are bits of wood. We'll see stuff about that in a bit, actually. That's just a table for runes, and you'll notice there's a couple of kind of not so project related pictures in here too, but that stops about here. This is a picture of Fenris and Jormungandr. That's actually a prototype for the one picture in the book that actually is acrylic, full colour sort of thing, although ironically it's nearly exclusively blue. The first rune, man, foe, Peorth. You'll notice I didn't do them in order. I did think of doing them in order, but I ended up deciding that I'd rather do them randomly. That's actually a rune spread, as in kind of configuration for you to choose runes and get a meaning from it. That's Erd Verdandi, I've called her there, and Skald. She's also called Nathanda. I can't remember where. That's a border for the book. You'll get to see that a lot. That was first thoughts of a cover. Annoyingly good for a cover that we knew was not going to be done in two-tone. The cover's completely different now. Seek, that was one that worried me a little. Burka, I like that. Yeah, I think largely what I did was actually chose the harder ones first. The ones that were really worrying me. Because, you know, obviously it would be easier. That was also initially an idea for a cover, and actually kind of was argued about right towards the end as a potential, but I don't think it will be the cover. I can't confirm that. Tyr, Hegel. Some of the difficult ones were difficult because I'd done them before and they were disasters. Some of them were difficult because I'd done them before and liked them. Hegel was one of them, that's Is. I can't like E. Dag, I really like that one. Lagu. Ur. Jera. I try on each image to show the rune not just once but a few times. If I probably look I'll find more. I think that's quite fun. Here's something of note. I've given this guy horns on their helmets. That's a kind of an archaeological joke, if you know what I mean, and that if Vikings had horns on their helmets, it was very, very rarely. In fact, Viking helmets look more like, to me, they look more like Norman helmets than what you picture when you close your eyes and think Vikings. But this rune is the rune Thorn, and it's the rune of Jotuns and devils, and also the Elder Fathark isn't Viking really, it's Proto-Viking. So I actually wanted to make a helmet that was more kind of Bronze Agey, and I wanted to use thorns on it, or horns. So that explains that kind of leap away from what I know is accurate. Wanna? Yep, annual 1970s mug, that's also authentic. Arthur, shopping bag. You know, I've definitely gone for a medieval feeling, I've definitely gone for a folky feeling, but I haven't held back if the imagery, modern imagery, is better suited, if you know what I mean. And I think, you know, one of the things I'm trying to do is to connect this to reality. It's not kind of back in the time when there were dragons stuff, it's now stuff as well. Gifu. Niet. Sometimes I even use imagery from opposing theories with regards to runes. So in Niet you have the Need Fire, but you also have the Hung Man. Brad. I've seen at least the beginnings of this book actually kind of prepared for print, and I have to say it's really pretty. I'm slightly worried that it looks kind of quite kind of children friendly. Slightly worried that parents will buy it for their kids, and then you know, I joke about, I've got a bit where I talk about how I don't like sacrifice, and I have this image of kids coming through to their parents, "Mummy, what's sacrifice?" That might not go down so well. It's not designed for children. I think all books should be fun. It's a really kind of weird concept we have. You know, most of what we have for children nowadays was kind of invented not long ago. It used to be that everybody had things that were like fun toys, pictures. That's quite close to the cover, although it's actually a chapter separator. These are chapter separators I'm onto now, I think. Runes for you. What now? Again, horns, but this time I'm actually kind of purposefully being a bit disrespectful. One of the things I talk about quite heavily in the book is the idea of sanctity and heresy and honour and stuff like that. One of the things I would say that my book really doesn't sell is the idea that things need to be treated sacredly, that things need to be, I don't know, that the idea that sacred, i.e. mystical, is the same as sacred, i.e. nobody's allowed to say bad things about this, nobody's allowed to look at anything else. I'd say that they were actually anti-runic. Nothing is sacred in runes, or rather everything is. That's nonagist. This is Odin and Frigg, Thor and Sif. I found the gods really hard because I really wanted to do them well. I really wanted to try and at the same time be kind of respectful, but at the same time kind of make them feel human. The stories of the gods feel really human. A lot of the gods are quite quirky. Tyr was particularly hard for me because Tyr is a one-armed god and I am one-armed, so anybody could easily jump to the conclusion that I'm somehow squeezing myself in here. I really busted guts to make sure that this guy looked nothing like me. I don't actually particularly equate with the Norse god Tyr. although his story is fascinating. Both his historical one and his Frey and Gerda, fun but risky one, Loki, and the younger Fthark. I've actually tried to make my book, you know, I think everybody who ever writes a book on the runes will say this, but I've really tried to stay as true as I can to academic stuff. I'm not an academic, I'm not an archaeologist, but I really don't want to stick in my guesswork. I really don't want to stick in things that I couldn't back up, and at the same time there are things that are guesswork where I have felt that I had to do that, and I hope when reading my book that you'll get the sense of my acknowledging when I'm guessing, when I'm, or even when I'm talking on a spiritual level. You know, when you say something spiritual or you make a lofty claim, it shouldn't be, again, it shouldn't be sacred. Do you know what I mean? The sacred bits are the bits that we know, not the bits that I think, no matter how I got to that conclusion. This is the one kind of totally historically, maybe even archaeologically kind of faithful depiction of a something, and it's a stone in Sweden. It's got the romantic name of, I think it's U91, and I can't believe it. One of my ways of testing my academic knowledge about the runes and Norse mythology, etc., was a guy called Jackson Crawford, who is skeptical, to say the least, of rune magic and all of that sort of stuff, and indeed to some degrees kind of Norse mysticism in general. And just 2 days after I'd sat there painstakingly, not just trying to blindfold translate it, but copy it perfectly for my book, he used it for an April Fool's joke about Vikings living with dinosaurs, and it was just like, no, how can you do this to me? Moving on, Bragi and Iden. I'd like to equate much more with them. Making the runes. Here you can see one of those craft burners, lolly sticks. I remember a few years ago some friends of mine found it particularly funny that I would mystically wave my lolly sticks, making a little pouch. You'll see I'm trying to be very unsacred about it, you know. I've even got a guy eating a lolly in the middle of it, with great sanctity. I've actually forgotten what that was for. Obviously it isn't going. I think that's called the absent or bad god. One of the things that you don't get in modern religions, you don't seem to get very often, is the idea that the world we live in, or God, may actually or may not inherently be on our side, or indeed interested in us in the slightest. And yet that was actually quite a common concept in older religions. One of the things I years and years ago I met someone and I was talking about how I was into Norse mysticism, and I never figured out whether they were joking when they said, oh, that's very old culture. The Vikings aren't really, in the grand scheme of things, that old. What they are is amazingly undiluted for that time, either completely destroyed or kind of adapted to Christianity. Their mythologies are still very raw to our modern ears, etc., etc. And And that's one of the concepts that survives in Norse mythology, which is often missing from modern paganism. The idea that there really might not be a god, and that if there is a god, they really might not have our best interests at heart. Moving on, that one is that's kind of New Age. It's just an illustration of the New Age. That's a book on mysticism and possibly self-improvement. Has to have a section about the Nazis. It's not something I'm that wild on, but if you write about the runes, you end up writing about the Nazis. So many people still even use the runes to kind of back up their creepy ideas. I don't. Well, unless other of my ideas are creepy, but I really can't stand racism. A European language. You know, it's ironic because I think one of the things that the runes shows you is that many of the cultures overseas and our culture are much more similar than you could possibly imagine. You know, digging up the runes. And then finally a page of, what to call them, decorations, possibly for page numbers, possibly for titles, stuff like that. But I'm never sure whether this really kind of comes across, but this you're looking at months of work. This was really hard work, plus the book itself, which was actually a huge struggle. I'm of the opinion that among mystical books, rune books are usually exceptional in their quality. I can think of 2 books, which obviously I won't name, written about the runes out of maybe about 34 that I've read, that weren't really conscious of making sure that they get historical research in there, archaeological research in there. They're nearly always knowledgeable about other mystical systems as well. So my first serious book, being on a subject both so emotive and so passionately researched, was, you know, it was quite scary. Plus, I don't know how to say it. Yeah, it is a huge project. I think it's something like 60,000 words. I think it's I don't know how many pages it will have. It's got all these pictures, so it'll be padded out nicely. I've also tried to contain some actual kind of traditional poems as they were written and stuff like that, which is quite fun. Along with these pictures. Yeah, I can't wait for it to be done. I can't wait for it to be in existence, and I also can't wait for my next project. You know, I'm very impatient. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. A look at, as I said, probably the biggest project I've ever done in my life.